The nation is headed to the polls, and all eyes are on 7 key battleground states. The states could determine who will be the next president of the United States. And of course, let's look at them. You got Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. These are the states both Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump have been spending the majority of their time in. I mean, you've seen it firsthand, right? The last few weeks have been some sort of campaign visit or event in our state nearly every day. So what is a battleground state, and how does a state become one? Well, pretty simple. It is when voters are almost evenly divided politically heading into the election, which means both parties see a chance for them to win that state. Let's look at the latest CBS polling for those 7 swing states. Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina all have kind of the same results. Trump leading Harris 50 to 48%. Michigan and Wisconsin, they lean the other way, with Harris leading 50 to 48. Then Nevada and Pennsylvania are showing a dead tie at 49% each. All of these are, of course, within the margin of error.
An average national polling error in presidential elections has been between 3 and 4 points over the last couple of decades. What that means for most states that are competitive, the 7 swing states, is they are all too close to call.
A race this close can not just break either way, but can break very large in a direction either way because there's so many factors.
Well, with these states being the key for this year's elections, let's look back at past elections to see where they stood. We're going to go start with Arizona and Georgia. They both were red for every presidential election up until 2020. That is when they turned blue for President Joe Biden. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin have been blue every year except in 2016 when it turned red for former President Donald Trump. Nevada went red in 2000 and 2004. But has been blue since then. And then here in North Carolina, we've been a red state for every election except 2008 when we went blue for Barack Obama. More than 78 million Americans have voted early this election. That's nearly half of the 2020 total vote. Majority of these voters are women. They make up 54%. Many political experts say securing votes among women will likely be the key to taking this presidency. A record number of North Carolinians hit the polls early this year as well. More than 4.2 million ballots have already been cast. That is 57% of all registered voters. Turnout in the 25 western counties affected by Helene was actually stronger than the rest of the state, nearly 59%. Here in North Carolina, the polls close on Election Day at 7:30. That's right. So if you're in line at that time, you do in fact get to vote. Once everyone is through, the precinct closes. The ballots in the tabulation machines, get this, are physically driven over to the County Board of Elections office, and the counting then really begins. This goes on all night, but even if there is a clear winner, the election is not official.
It's 10 days after the election. We have it's called the canvass period, where we are auditing, we are conducting recounts if we need to. We're dealing with issues or investigating things that may have come up. We're looking at provisional ballots for people that may have had questions about registration. We're looking at the issues that might have cropped up with voters and their ID. But the big thing is we are auditing and auditing to get to this final to the final certification of the election.
All of the checking and the double checking. Again, Election Day is tomorrow. The final certificate of the election, though, is 10 days later. That is on Friday, the 15th. So the winner of the presidential election isn't picked based on how many votes a nominee gets. It all comes down, of course, to the Electoral College. But how does the Electoral College work? We're going to take a closer look.
Why does the United States use the Electoral College to pick the president? The founding fathers were split. Should Congress choose the president, or should it be left to the people? The use of electors was the solution. When you cast your vote for president, you're deciding which electors will represent your state. The number of electors in each state is determined by how many seats in Congress that state has, and that number is based on the state's population. So, for example, let's look at California. Every state has 2 senators, so right off the bat, that's 2 electors. California, the most populous state, has 52 representatives in the House, so the Golden State gets 54 total electors. Whichever candidate wins California will get all 54 electoral votes. There are 538 total electoral votes, 535 for the states and 3 for the District of Columbia. 48 states are winner take all. Maine and Nebraska give 2 electoral votes to the statewide winner and 1 for the winner of each congressional district. A simple majority of 270 electoral votes is needed to win. If neither candidate gets to 270, the House of Representatives will determine the president, but each state delegation, regardless of the number of electors, must vote as one. So there are only 50 votes up for grabs. The Senate will determine the vice president with a simple majority vote of all 100 senators. The popular vote winner has lost the Electoral College in 2 of the last 6 elections, and that has prompted calls to switch the popular vote system, but that requires a constitutional amendment.
Well, going back to those 7 swing states, this is how many electoral votes each one of them have and how it could decide the winner. Pennsylvania, of course, having the most with 19, followed by Georgia and North Carolina with 16. Michigan has 15, Arizona 11, Wisconsin 10, Nevada has 6. Now, total, that is 93 of the 270 electoral votes that a candidate needs to win, which is just over a third. If you haven't voted yet and you plan on going tomorrow, here are 3 things to know. Polls are open 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. You must vote at your designated precinct and you must have a valid ID to vote.